Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be looking at Neville Goddard. And, you sent us this book of his. It's called Imagination is Christ. And from what I've been reading, I think we can both agree this is going to be a really fascinating dive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be right up your alley. Those
Yeah.
aha moments that you're always looking for. I think Neville's going to provide a lot of those.
Definitely. So let's just jump right into it. One of the first things that really struck me was this core premise of his imagination is Christ. It's a pretty bold statement, right? Like, what do you think he means by that?
Well, he's definitely not limiting Christ to a single historical figure, right? It's more about this creative power within each of us. That's what he's getting at. And the way we tap into that power, he says, is through our imagination.
So then he takes it even further. He claims that imagining actually creates reality. Like, not just influences it, but actually brings things into being. How does he bridge that gap, between what we imagine and what actually happens in the physical world?
That's where his concept of living in the end comes into play. It's about more than just visualizing something. It's about really, truly immersing yourself in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, as if it's already happened.
So you engage all your senses, you really feel the emotions, and you truly believe it's real?
Exactly. You're living in that reality.
He uses the example of his brother Victor and the family business to illustrate this, right?
He does. Victor really wanted to reclaim his family's honor and success, which he felt had been compromised. And so he really focused his imagination on a specific building, one that held a lot of significance for him.
So he pictured the family name on the marquee, felt the pride of ownership really lived in that reality.
For 2 years he did.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable how things seemingly just fell into place almost miraculously to make that vision a reality.
So it sounds like we could achieve anything if we could harness that kind of focus and belief.
Well, that's exactly the challenge Goddard throws out to his readers. He wants us to test this idea in our own lives.
He suggests asking ourselves, how would I feel if my desire were already true? And then really dwelling in that feeling.
Sleeping in that assumption.
Even if logic and your senses are telling you otherwise, he says that consistent assumption will eventually harden into fact.
Right. He uses another really powerful example to demonstrate this. It's about a friend who was about to be fired.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had no safety net of family to support. He confided in Goddard's friend about his fears.
So what did Goddard's friend do? Offer some practical advice?
No, he turned to the power of imagination.
Okay, he didn't even tell the man what he was doing. He just started imagining him being praised and valued at work, even getting a raise.
Yep, and get this, within 48 hours, the whole situation flipped. The friend was recognized for his work, and he did get a raise.
But he was still anxious, right?
Yeah, he actually decided to quit. Gave his 2 weeks notice.
Oh, that's risky, especially with his financial situation.
It was. But Goddard's friend didn't waver. He just kept living in the end. He imagined his friend not only employed, but thriving in a new position with a 25% raise.
And I'm guessing this is where it gets really interesting.
It does. During his week off, the friend got offered a new position without even applying, with a 25% raise.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like focused imagination can really influence events even beyond our immediate control.
It highlights that potential for sure.
So it's not just about passively daydreaming. It's about consciously choosing what we focus on, what we allow to take root in our minds.
Absolutely, and that's a crucial point Goddard makes. He encourages us to be mindful of the images we're entertaining, to feed our imagination with what we want, not with fear or negativity.
He even compares it to reading the newspaper, which is often filled with negative news.
Oh yeah, he says dwelling on those stories can really be detrimental.
Like consuming something you know is bad for you, but you just keep doing it.
Exactly. It's about making that conscious choice to focus on what we want to create, not on what we fear or dislike. And this leads to another key idea of the power of assumption.
And he uses Julius Caesar as an example of this, right? That Caesar wasn't born great, but he assumed greatness, and that ultimately shaped his reality.
Precisely, Goddard argues that Caesar's unwavering assumption of his own power and leadership drew people and circumstances to him that ultimately led to his rise.
Like he didn't let the limitations of his birth dictate his future.
He assumed the identity he desired and lived as if it were already true.
So he's saying we need to become actors, playing the role of the person we want to be until it becomes our reality.
I like that analogy. By consistently inhabiting the feeling of our wish fulfilled, We're aligning ourselves with the frequency of that reality and drawing it into our experience.
This all ties back to his idea of imagination as Christ. Right.
It does. If Christ represents this creative power within us, and we access that power through our imagination, then we all have the ability to shape our own reality.
And this leads to his really interesting interpretation of the crucifixion.
Which he doesn't see as a historical event.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a symbolic representation of a spiritual truth.
Exactly. He even describes this intense mystical experience where he felt himself being crucified onto his physical body.
Yeah, he talked about these 6 vortices of energy in his hands, feet, head, and side.
That felt like they were nailing him to his physical form.
And he connects this to the biblical quote from John, "No one takes away my life. I lay it down myself. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to lift it up again."
Powerful stuff, right?
It is. So is he saying that Christ's crucifixion is a metaphor for our own identification with the physical world? That we willingly limit ourselves by attaching to our physical form and our beliefs?
That's a great way to put it. We nail ourselves to our limitations. And just as Christ rose from the dead, Goddard believes we can rise above our limitations by recognizing our true identity as one with the divine.
He also has a very unique take on Judas and the betrayal.
Yeah, instead of seeing Judas as this separate individual who betrayed Jesus, he sees him as a representation of the spirit of man betraying the spirit of God within him.
So it's this idea of self-betrayal, the denial of our own divine nature.
Exactly. He even mentions a vision he had where he was teaching a group of men and one betrays him to the authorities.
And that connects to this idea of self-betrayal.
It does. In the vision, he's symbolically nailed to his physical form, representing the limitations we impose on ourselves through our beliefs and actions. We're responsible for our own liberation or our own imprisonment.
Now this next part might surprise some people. It's his views on reincarnation.
He actually rejected the idea of reincarnation.
Really? That seems a bit unexpected.
I know, right? Especially considering his mystical leanings and exploration of spiritual concepts.
So why do you think he rejected it?
Well, he believed that reincarnation is a man-made theory that exploits people's desire for spiritual understanding. He uses the example of Krishnamurti, this spiritual teacher, who was initially promoted as the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
And books were published outlining Krishnamurti's supposed past lives.
And even though Krishnamurti denied those claims, the books continued to circulate.
So Goddard saw that as people clinging to a belief system, maybe even profiting from it without questioning it?
Exactly. He felt it illustrated how easily people can be misled by appealing to their desire for spiritual knowledge. True spiritual awakening comes from within, not from seeking external validation or clinging to theories.
So if he didn't believe in reincarnation, what did he believe happened after death?
Well, he suggested that death is simply a transition to a world very similar to this one. He described seeing people who had died restored to youthful bodies in a physical world that mirrored our own.
He even mentioned trying to change things from the other side.
But he found he couldn't.
So he's saying that the real journey, the real work happens while we're here in this life.
That's his emphasis for sure. True freedom comes not from dying, but from awakening to our true identity while we're still alive.
And this awakening for Goddard is the realization of our oneness with the risen Lord.
Yes, the recognition that we are not separate from the divine.
And he stresses that this is an individual experience, not a collective one.
Meaning we each awaken in our own time and in our own way.
But we maintain our individuality even as we realize our divine essence.
We do. We retain our unique personalities and perspectives. We don't merge into some kind of collective consciousness. It's a fascinating blend of biblical concepts with a focus on personal experience and self-discovery.
It really is. And it raises a lot of questions. Like, if our imagination is this potent, if it can really shape reality, then what responsibility do we have for the images we hold in our minds, not only for ourselves, but for others?
That's an important question, one that Goddard definitely brings up. He reminds us that imagination can be used for good or ill. It's a powerful tool, and we have a responsibility to use it wisely and ethically.
He even gives that example of conjuring up the sound of the Battle Hymn of the Republic in his mind.
Even though he doesn't have any musical ability.
It's as if he's saying our thoughts have an effect on the world around us, whether we're aware of it or not.
It brings us to Goddard's challenge to his readers. He urges us to choose an assumption, to believe in it wholeheartedly, and to test his ideas in our own lives.
So to experiment with the power of our imagination and see how it shapes our reality.
To find out what we truly want, without seeking approval from others, and to persist in our assumptions, even when the external world seems to contradict them.
It's a call to step into our power as creators of our own reality. But before we get into all that, I think it's time for a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to dive deeper into the practical applications of Goddard's ideas.
Sounds good. Okay, so we've been talking about some pretty wild concepts, like imagination being the key to creation and living in the end. This idea that Christ is this creative force inside of all of us.
I know, right? It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
So how do we actually use these ideas in our everyday lives?
Well, that's the really cool part about Neville Goddard. He's not just about abstract theories. He wants us to actually apply these ideas and see what happens.
Okay, so where do we start?
He really emphasizes the importance of choosing our assumptions carefully. Like, we have the power to decide what we believe, and those beliefs will shape our reality.
So it's about being aware of the thoughts we're holding on to, the stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly. Remember how he talks about God not being some distant figure, but the very force of imagination within us?
Yeah, so we're not actually powerless. We have this creative power right here, right now.
Exactly. And he urges us to stop giving our power away, whether it's to circumstances, to other people, or even to those limiting beliefs we have about ourselves.
He talks about reclaiming our birthright, this ability to shape our own experience.
Mm-hmm. And you know what else I love?
What's that?
He talks about teaching these ideas to children.
Oh, yeah, I love that too. You can imagine growing up with that kind of understanding of your own potential.
It would change everything, right? To know from a young age that you're not limited by your circumstances, that you have the power to create your own reality.
Exactly. And he challenges us to do the same for ourselves, to let go of those limiting beliefs we might have about ourselves, our families, our potential.
He even talks about aristocracy in a really interesting way. It's not about social status or inherited wealth for him.
It's not.
No. True aristocracy is about recognizing our divine nature, the creative power that we all have inside of us.
I like that. So much better than the traditional definition.
Right.
Okay, so he's telling us to start living from that place of power, to assume the best, to act as if our dreams are already real. But what about when things get tough? When the external world doesn't seem to match up with what we're trying to create?
Well, that's where the real work comes in. Goddard knew it's not always easy to keep living in the end, especially when you're facing challenges. But he says persistence is key. He uses the analogy of a seed being planted in the ground.
It doesn't just sprout up overnight.
Nope. It needs time, nurturing, consistent attention. Our desires are like seeds. We have to tend to them with faith and belief, even when we don't see results right away.
So trusting the process, even when things are uncertain?
Exactly. And remembering that our thoughts aren't just these private things in our heads. They have real power, to influence the world around us.
And that power comes with responsibility.
Absolutely. It makes you think about the kind of world we could create if we were all more aware of the images we hold in our minds. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
If imagining really does create reality, then we have a responsibility for those images we're putting out there.
That's a huge question that Goddard leaves us to really think about. It's a big ethical question, He reminds us that even though imagination can be used for good, it can also be misused.
Our thoughts aren't neutral. They have a ripple effect.
Exactly. It's not just about getting what we want. It's about realizing that we're all connected and our individual realities are part of this bigger picture.
We're all in this together.
Yeah. Goddard is challenging us to use our imagination wisely, to create not just for ourselves, but to make the world a better place.
That's a really powerful idea. It's not just about personal gain. It's about using our creative power to make a difference.
And that's what I think makes Goddard so interesting. He offers this path to personal fulfillment, but it also leads to a greater sense of purpose.
It's not just about you. It's about everyone.
Exactly. He's not afraid of the challenges or the ethical questions. He embraces them. And by doing that, he's inviting us to step into a more conscious way of being.
It's a journey of self-discovery, but it's also about transforming the world around us.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to change our lives and the world we live in.
That's a powerful message. So powerful. This whole deep dive has been incredibly inspiring,
I agree. It's given me a new perspective on how powerful our minds really are and the responsibility that comes with that.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. And it's definitely made me want to start putting these ideas into practice in my own life.
Me too. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Neville Goddard's work. We hope you found it as inspiring as we have.
Remember, your imagination is the key to unlocking your potential. Don't be afraid to dream big, believe in yourself, and never underestimate the power of your own mind to create the life you want.
Until next time, keep imagining, keep creating, and keep believing. Goodbye. It's amazing how Goddard takes these mystical ideas, almost spiritual, and blends them with this practical approach to personal transformation.
Yeah, it's not about blindly believing. It's about testing it out, seeing what works for you.
He even says that in 5 years, the people who laugh at these ideas might be working for us while we're living the life we imagined.
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, if we believe we're limited, will those limitations become our reality? But if we believe we can create anything, well, who knows what's possible?
He reminds us that we don't have to wait for permission to go after what we want. We can choose what we believe right now and act like it's already true.
That's living in the end, right? Bridging that gap between what we imagine and what we experience.
It's like becoming the person we want to be. Not just thinking about it, but actually being that person.
Exactly.
It's kind of like fake it till you make it, but on a much deeper level.
It is. You're not pretending.
Yeah.
You're aligning yourself with what you want to experience.
And that's where that power of assumption comes in. It's about making a choice to believe in something, even if there's no proof yet.
Like planting a seed and taking care of it, knowing that eventually it will grow.
We have to nurture our desires just like we'd nurture a plant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not always easy, but it can be so rewarding.
Goddard's work really shows us that we're not just victims of circumstance. We're creators. We have the power to shape our lives, to make our dreams come true.
And to make the world a better place. It all starts with imagination, with that spark of possibility.
It's about believing in something bigger than ourselves, something that pushes us to reach our full potential.
This has been an incredible deep dive. It's given me so much to think about.
Me too. It's a whole new perspective on how powerful our minds are and the responsibility that comes with that.
Goddard's work is a real gift. It reminds us that we're capable of so much more than we think.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of Neville Goddard.
We hope you found it as inspiring and thought-provoking as we have.
Remember, your imagination is the key to unlocking your full potential. Don't be afraid to dream big, believe in yourself, and never underestimate the power of your own mind.
Until next time, keep imagining, keep creating, and keep believing.
Goodbye, everyone.